like editing Empire right before you got here, or were you?
No, actually, we're kind of in between stuff because we just finished that last thing, and we have editors working right now.
We have people on it right now.
We have people on it right now. Yeah, we have others. Like right now, it's this nice point because the show's season 3 just premiered. And
that's Empire you're talking about?
Of Empire, yeah. And all of that is kind of, there's a big push for that, like right leading up to the premiere. We do like a lot of shoots and, kind of promo stuff and things like that. And now that it's premiered and it's kind of got a little bit of momentum going, that's its own thing. And we'll kind of pop in, grab shoots and stuff like that as we go. But like the big push at the beginning of the season's done. And then, so we're kind of in between that. And then there's another show in Atlanta that we're going to do that's also Fox called Star.
Star?
Star.
By the way, we're rolling. So how about that?
Hey, what's up?
I just wanted to know what he was doing right before he got here.
Well, how long was that going for?
Do you prefer Matthew or Matt?
Yeah, I like, if it's just you and I, Matt, but, for anything.
In the professional world, is it Matthew?
In the professional world, it's Matthew Byori Mann.
Like if Terrence Howard runs into you, is he like, Matthew, he has to call you Matthew?
No, he's Matt, but if he remembers my name,
yeah.
I actually directed him last season. We did we did these holiday promos with him and Taraji.
Okay.
And they had a holiday special. So we shot these promos. I directed them, and like I'd met them several times. A week later, I kid you not, we're on set shooting behind the scenes, and he comes up to me. I'm with a Fox producer, so he comes up to me, talks to the producer, and he introduces himself to me.
Yes.
And I was kind of like in the situation where I'm like, do I say something? I'm like, oh, great to meet you.
How long was the shoot where you directed him? Like, would you say how many hours or how long did you spend with him?
It was quick. It was a quick lunch hour thing.
Okay.
We shot a series of promos.
Just quick enough for him to forget you.
I'm just a forgettable guy.
This is Matt Mann. You're listening to a chatter of fact. These are not interviews. These are conversations. And you're the first editor, director / film guy, TV guy that I've had down here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you're busting the film TV cherry right now. Right now, it's happening this very second. And I'm intrigued, man, because it's you live in both worlds. You're in sort of the big. I mean, Empire is huge. That's a huge show. And you're in that realm, but then you're doing Kickstarter stuff and you're doing other stuff in the midst of it. So it's exciting, man. So I mean, I love hearing like a good Terrence Howard story, but I want to get to the nitty gritty.
By the way, Terrence Howard, great guy.
Is he really cool?
He's very professional, very polite, very nice. I just want to say that. Yeah. Because
does he? Because he kind of comes off that way when I hear him. He seems like a low key dude, even in interviews. But I mean, you can never tell. So yeah, professional dude, prepared, and nice guy.
Yeah, and shakes everyone's hand. Doesn't seem to have an ego. I mean, like obviously, it's very limited periods of time that we work with.
But it's pleasant.
But it's always pleasant.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, and everyone on the cast, honestly, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. It's not like any of them are actually going to be listening to I'm saying on this podcast.
You never know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's true. That's true.
Tomorrow morning, you're going to see him, and he's going to give you a hug and say, hey, man, thanks.
Terrence, give me a call, man. We got some projects.
He's just going to hold up a glass of, just a beer, just say, man, a chatter fact. I heard it. Thanks, man. Thanks. No, it's cool, man. So you're working on that because when you edit, you direct, you shoot. Are you shooting too? Mm-hmm. So you're like the all-purpose guy, which you have to be in a way if you're going to survive in this world. Wouldn't you say, more or less? I mean, there's still the upper echelon of, I am the director, but I mean, if you really want to survive forever and ever, if you can know most of the craft, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I definitely came into this from the very beginning. I wanted to be a director. Like that was just something.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, so central Illinois, in a college town, and I wanted to be a police officer at one point because I loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and I wanted to beat up the bad guys. And then I wanted to be a garbage man because I wanted to ride on the back of the truck.
Wow.
And then I wanted to be a film actor because that excited me, and I loved movies and stuff like that as a kid.
How old did that transit? When did that happen?
Like 8 or 9.
Okay.
And then I distinctly remember this actually because I was talking on the phone with my mom's really good childhood friend, and we were just chatting. She was like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to be an actor." And then I said something along the lines of like, "Wait, who's the person who tells everybody else what to do?" And then she goes, "Oh, that's a director." I'm like, "Yeah, I want to be that."
Really?
Absolutely. I never changed my mind since then. So, I mean...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was it. Like,
wait, do you have, like, siblings? Did you... Are you the oldest? Are you used to being in charge?
I am the oldest, yeah.
So there it is. All right.
Yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know. I mean, I'm a control freak or
there
something.
There you go, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out where we were going with this. Oh, but, like, so knowing that and wanting to kind of having this, like, overarching long-term goal, you kind of have to, pay your dues in some respects in any way you can to, make a career out of it, especially when you're kind of working your way up. So do a little bit of everything.
Did you dabble? Man, this is so weird. You wanted to be what, a cop? Then the back of the garbage truck man.
Yeah, because you get to ride on it.
And a director, straight to well, you skipped over actor for a second, and then director.
Yeah, like a
oh my
minute,
gosh!
Yeah.
So Matt and I were talking about how we live in parallel universes. There's so many similarities with us, and we're kind of like neighbors too. And it kind of when we run into this. Hey neighbor, hey, well, so what do you do? Oh, well, I gotta go film and gotta go direct edit Empire. And then I thought, what? Huh? Hey! And that's basically how this sort of worked out. But it's funny because I think I wanted to be a fire truck, not a fireman. When I was like 3, I wanted to be a fire truck.
Okay.
I don't know why or how that worked out. At some point, it was going to be
like
a football
Thomas
player.
The Tank Engine.
I think so, but man, then... we lived in a time when the Indiana Jones movies came out. There was a time when it was a different world because they were celebrating Steven Spielberg. They were celebrating just the director. Where now you don't necessarily. I mean, kids don't necessarily know the names of directors right now. It's still about the actors,
unless it's like J.J. Abrams. Or something.
Yeah. And now J.J. Abrams, he's transcending. He's probably the closest to a modern day Spielberg in a way. Jon Favreau, but. It's hard to, you and I are tainted. We can't, can we really make that call? Because we're both kind of film buffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for us, they're out there, but I don't know. Does a third grader know J.J. Abrams? I'm not sure. You know?
Maybe. Yeah. That's a good question.
Because right now, it's as if you and I, if you and I were into baseball, those are our players right now. That's who we watch.
Right.
Because we're kind of in the industry or fans of the industry, whatever it is. So, but when I was a kid, they really made a big deal out of Steven Spielberg. It was the first time I'd ever really seen a director getting that much play. And maybe years before, what's his name? Now I'm forgetting the name of an all-time, like a classic director, Psycho and the...
Hitchcock.
Yeah, no, I mean, before that, Hitchcock was a celebrity in his own right.
Sure.
But yeah, when I was a kid, Spielberg just became something, and then I saw... Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I remember going to the movie I saw that at the movie. I don't know, I'm that like old. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, I was just a kid. I was like in second grade or something. But I remember not knowing what I was going to see. They didn't really spell it out in trailers. I just went with my dad, and then I was blown away. But again, I heard that this guy named Steven Spielberg put it all together. Right. So you and I, man, it's so weird. I went from fire truck to football player to director.
And you know what it was for me? So, I'm a little younger. But I remember that the point where I realized the role of a director and like the power they had but not just that, but like the way that they could, the artistry of it and everything like that. I think I had a VHS of the Star Wars trilogy, and at the beginning it was like before the special edition, but it was like, and before the movie played, they had an interview with George Lucas
on the actual DVD.
On the tape, yeah.
On the tape. Are we talking VHS?
Yeah, it's VHS.
Yes.
And it was like Leonard Maltin just interviewing George Lucas, and I'm like, it just like Star Wars for me was just this thing that existed, right? Like it was this place and this universe and these characters, and it was like all real. And the thought that like a person made that up just completely blew my mind. And at that point, that's the thing that got me hooked. And I just like could not get enough of the idea of being the person to make that kind of thing. Like it's crazy.
And he was the other guy, you know. He was the yeah, it was Lucas and Spielberg. It was the two of them. You know, those were the two sort of rock stars. You know, they invented. Well, Spielberg invented the blockbuster. They said Jaws was like the first blockbuster, and then Star Wars just changed the rules. You know, and kudos to him, by the way, because my 7-year-old daughter, Molly, has just recently seen Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. She hasn't seen the originals yet, and to his credit, I'm watching her go through the same emotions that I went through when I was her age. So
That's unbelievable.
He did great work. You know, I mean, she was
completely transcendent.
Totally. She was getting into the first one, and she became an instant fan of, oddly enough, not Princess Leia, but Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Big Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. And by Empire Strikes Back, I'm watching her go through the same emotions that I went through. What? That Darth Vader's his father? Spoiler alert to anybody that doesn't live on the planet Earth.
So she didn't have the Luke, I am your father thing going into it.
I kept her. She was. You know, I mean,
that's good parenting right there, man. That's great parenting.
Yeah. So she had no idea, and that's why I never showed her the prequels, which I'm still not completely a fan of, but I still like watching them. So when she got to Empire Strikes Back ruined her world. She's just, oh my God. And at the end of the movie, she's like, this is it? Han Solo's frozen? Luke lost his arm? This can't be it. And then she watched Return of the Jedi and just ate it up. And the funny thing is, I was going to make her wait like a year to watch The Force Awakens because I thought, you know, let her bask in these characters and joy. She doesn't want to see Han Solo go yet. Again, spoiler alert, if you don't live on planet Earth and haven't seen the Star Wars movie, if you're just visiting. So they were watching Force Awakens, and I couldn't help it. Like a month into it, I'm like, I know you want to see it.
Yeah.
Whole movie, this 7-year-old kid is just waiting for the original cast. You know, she's into it, but where's Luke? Where's Han? Where's Leia? You know, she wants to see them. First time Chewbacca and Han Solo get onto the Millennium Falcon. Oh, first, she goes nuts when she sees the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
That's her first taste of the old stuff. Like, yes!
Yeah.
And then Chewbacca comes out of the ship. She's like, there's Chewbacca! And then Han Solo runs out. And then she says, and there's... And she cringes just a little bit. Oh... Old Han Solo. And then I'm defending like Han. I'm like, well, no,
it's been a while.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, he just doesn't move like he used to, right, Dad? I'm like, no, he looks fine. I'm a Harrison
His leg
Ford.
did get crushed like in an accident on set, and he was in a plane crash. But
he had a lot going on. But to see her get so engulfed in it, and then
that's great.
She couldn't wait for Luke. She just kept saying, I don't care if he looks old. I need to see Luke Skywalker. So she went nuts at the end, and then she went nuts in anger because then it was over. And then I had to say, like, welcome to my world. Because she's like, well, where? Because she's just got to fire him off. You got to binge watch them days apart. And I had the opportunity to just cackle and say, yes, now you have to wait 2 years the way I had to wait. But can you believe, I mean, that's a tribute to Lucas. Absolutely. Say what we will about all the other stuff and people who complained about what he did and Jar Jar Binks in the new movies, you know. But I heard a great point brought up once. The guy was, you know, he's a product of the 70s. You know, he's an artist. He's not really there to serve fans. The guy served himself, and he wanted to keep creating different things. That doesn't mean that we're going to all be wonderful and a hit.
Right.
You know?
Well, and the interesting thing, too, is that, like, in this day and age, we're kind of riding the wave of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
And the summer blockbuster and these franchises, right? But, like, you know, when he came into it and he did it, like there was no roadmap. So when he first did it and kind of caught lightning in a bottle and everybody, you know, and everyone praised him for it, he wasn't going to use the mentality of like, oh, I'm just going to do that again. His process may have been similar when he did the prequels. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fan of the prequels either, but at least it came from a genuine place of like, you know, and of course he's also a mogul and all this other stuff, and the franchising, the merchandising side of it and everything like that. You know, like there is a certain amount of was this decision made because he is an artist or because he is a business person?
I never thought of that. Like, oh, wait a minute, is this character here because we need some new action figures?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Wow. I mean, it seems, who knows, I guess, but it seems like he just wanted to create. I mean, the guy's rich enough, and
Right.
It's just,
He didn't need to do it.
He didn't need to do it.
Not
He
for
didn't
the
need
money,
to do it.
anyway.
But it's weird because I heard him in an interview after The Force Awakens came out, and he said, well, it's fine, but it's for the fans. That's just for the fans.
Yeah.
Because they made a Star Wars movie that just feels like my other Star Wars movies, you
Yeah.
know? And he's right about that.
That's true.
To his credit, he's correct.
Well,
he said
yeah.
that if he jumped back in, he wanted to go somewhere completely different, and he wanted to do different things in film that haven't been done before. That carbon copy of Star Wars that I saw that J.J. Abrams did, he did make it for us, and I ate that up.
I loved it, man. Yeah, yeah.
It brought me, I felt like I was a kid again, you know? And then kudos to him. The formula, isn't it weird? Because we can slam on Hollywood for just recycling too much, but that one, I'll take it. Keep recycling. Recycle it till I'm 90. And it worked. It worked on a 7-year-old girl, before she even got to Rey, the new female lead, which is kind of cool that there's now a female lead that might be at the forefront of all the movies. That's cool.
Absolutely.
I love that for my daughter.
Yeah.
But right now, my daughter just wants to see old Luke Skywalker back at it. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, kudos to Luke. How about that?
Yeah.
A good left turn, man. See, now you are officially on a Chatter Effect. That's how this whole thing works.
So glad to be here, man. This is exactly how every conversation I ever have goes anyway. So this is,
This feels like home.
What was the topic we were talking about? I have no idea, but Star Wars is great.
So you decide you want to be a director. Dude, seriously, parallel universes, because I focused on the Spielberg kind of vibe, but then you were right there, just over here. Lucas was like an inspiration.
Yeah, and Spielberg too. You know, I as soon as I decided I wanted to become a filmmaker, I kind of like became obsessed with like the idea of like an auteur, or like, you know, just kind of like a musician has favorite bands, and you know, just because you know, and you have a wealth of different influences and inspirations and stuff like that, and that's kind of what I gravitated towards when I was a kid.
How old were you when you kind of saw the George Lucas thing, and you were still
8 or
like
9.
a grade schooler? Okay.
Yeah.
So then at some point throughout grade school, you're sort of you're experimenting. I mean, are you messing around with a video camera yet? You're already.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I I got really into it, and my parents had just like an old camcorder.
Yeah.
And well, it wasn't old at the time, but yeah, they had a camcorder, and I just, you know, my friends and I had a next door neighbor that Nick, and him and I both were interested in film, and he got like, he had this huge like collection of movies and stuff like that. So I just always go over to his place, and we would like, you know, we would watch movies, and we got really into like kind of parody movies. Cause like, I think there was enough self-awareness that we knew we couldn't do something for real. Like we couldn't make, you know, we were like super into like Bond movies, you know, when we were like in middle school. So we like would make these like parody Bond movies, just grabbing onto the fact that it's cheesy and stupid, and we didn't have like anything to make it good. You know, we didn't have any money. We had a crappy camera.
So you went for the comedy.
So we're just like, oh, let's just embrace it for what it is, as if we really thought it through. We're just like, let's just make a Bond movie that is not a Bond movie, and we can just totally do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So I mean, we kind of did that type of thing, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, there was kind of a point where I just like had made that decision and was constantly like just writing down ideas, and you know, trying to you know, wanting to be a filmmaker, but not knowing how to, and trying to absorb as much as possible.
So in grade school, are you just making a bunch of pieces with that sort of camcorder, or just a few?
Yeah, just like whenever.
Was it just the two of you, or how many friends were you able to sort of get into the circle?
You know, like I have a big family, and
they lived close, or
they didn't, but they would come like once a year in the summer for like a month.
Oh, there you go.
And so I have like all my little cousins in these movies with me, and we're doing
summer as a kid. That's prime film season.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We were like obsessed with wanting to make stuff, and for no reason other than our own entertainment. It was a way to pass the time and hang out, and we wouldn't show anyone it. Like, it wasn't for anyone but us, and that was kind of the point.
How many do you think you would do in a summer?
Sometimes just the sheer, like, sometimes it was just like, oh, I have this idea, like, and we would just like write it in quotations. We would just make up what the story would be and like rehearse it in quotations. It was just like a thing to do. It was like we were kids playing.
And you said you were in the martial arts. Were you into martial arts back then?
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you ever utilize that in some of the films, like a little bit of fight scene?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Do you have any of these pieces?
Somewhere. Not in a digital format. So I mean, actually, I think there's like an old bag, a camera bag that's just like full of these like little tapes, and I think we tried to fire it up, and the camcorder didn't work anymore or something like that. But
fascinating.
Yeah, we'll salvage it. But
what do you think? You probably took a lot away from that. I mean, I would imagine like tons. You were self-taught in so many ways probably before you made it official and jumped into official training and such.
Right.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, man. I mean, oh my God, we could have been brothers in a way. So the listeners out there, so the fan base that I have. I think the first people that started listening to the podcast know me primarily as a singer-songwriter, and now I have these just podcast people,
right?
And the beauty of this thing is I'm always able to kind of share new things, so they get to know you, they get to know me. Not many people know that I had any kind of background in that. I've never really talked about it, but dude, we didn't have the camcorder. A friend of mine down the block had one, 2 blocks away. His name was Noel Sahagan, and I happen to have 4 guys that I grew up with who were just hilarious. They were so talented. Any one of them, I stand behind this now that I've worked as a professional and I've done some acting and done some directing, done some improv. Any one of those guys could have grown up and had careers, and they just didn't choose that, So I was lucky to have these gifted dudes. But same thing. I mean, summer, we probably would do 25 to 20 pieces a summer. And they would be short. And again, you got to go parody. You go with the parody.
Of course, right?
But did you do, I mean, after a while, his camera started to just live at my house because I had all these ideas for, wait a minute, how do we make a gunshot happen? How can we cut it? And then, maybe hold up. I remember him and I late at night holding up a cardboard, just a piece of cardboard, and filming and then cutting that. And the way you had to edit back then is you had to just stop the camera.
Right.
And then press record again. And then we would cut a little hole in the cardboard, and then we'd hold it back up, and then we'd press record. So then on film, it would look like a bang. And then I can't even remember how we figured out audio with that little camcorder, but we would add like a gunshot sound.
Yeah.
So we were practicing these little things. After a while, we were crafting.
Yeah.
After a while, how do we make it look like he chopped his head off and it flew into the air, So we found like a dummy head.
Right.
And it looked like somebody had a head chopped off, and then we just shot to the air, and then, Billy, throw the fake head up in the air really high, But all those things, I mean, I was editing on the camera. And then it got to the point where you're editing with the camera, and it's all a one camera shoot.
Right.
But after a while, I mean, did you run into this? Like, I started to find myself, because I was such a fan of movies, I wanted, we're going to film a conversation, or we're going to film this scene. And all I had to go on was were these movies that had 4 cameras, 3 cameras, 2 cameras. So I just shot every piece, but you had to edit while you shot.
Yep, in sequence.
In sequence. Yep. And there wasn't anything. Later on, I ended up doing something for public access when I was like 16. I wrote like an entire script, like an hour-long script, because I was into the martial arts as well.
Yeah?
And then one day...
This is crazy, man.
Isn't this nuts?
Stop stealing my life.
But the interesting thing is, I did it professionally, but not to the point where, like, you ran with it, where then I want to sing, and I went the other way.
Sure.
But, dude, I need to know, how, if you ever went through this. I think one day we were making all these parodies, And then one day we were watching like a Chuck Norris movie or something. And then we thought, well, wait a minute, look at the angles. Like if you just do this, do that. And we were like in the 8th grade. You know, put the camera here. That's probably how they did that punch. Right. They could probably do this. And then they said, well, you know, Robby, you know the martial arts and stuff too. You can do kicks.
Right.
And then that was it. We went outside. We filmed a fight scene. And then after that, everything we did had a fight scene. Like everything we did. But the weirdest thing is by the time 2 years had passed, not only did we know how to react and actually do very good fight scenes, but with the angles, we knew how to shoot them. Like,
Right.
did you have problems with shooting it, or were you thinking of angles and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I was pretty obsessed by a certain point.
Yeah.
And like, I want to say like in middle school, high school, I mean, that's when DVDs kind of became a thing, and I would just like study. Like,
Really?
I would buy The Matrix. I watched that so many times. You know, if it were a VHS, it would have been worn out. You know, type of thing. And but like the special features, you know, where the filmmakers would talk about it, which I think, you know, I think for all the things that are happening right now, and not to go off on a crazy tangent, there's kind of this like now that like DVDs and Blu-rays are kind of more of like a novelty item.
Yeah.
And people are kind of watching a lot of stuff like on Netflix and things like that. People kind of like they try to consume as much as possible, but they don't kind of revisit things. And that was like how I grew up. It was like, I love this movie. And, you know, like nowadays you watch Stranger Things on Netflix, and,
Right.
and you watch it through, you love it, and you move on with your life. But I remember, you know, I'd watched The Matrix the first time, and it like blew my mind. And I'm like, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And I watched it again, and then I would watch the special features where like the filmmakers would tell you about how and you would see the sets and how they would shoot it, and like the mystique of the film would kind of start to would kind of not dissolve, like, because it was still incredible, and the process was even more enchanting to me, and I would just be like, how do they do that? And like, that's just a guy that made that decision, and it's like, and you know, that set was just like, those backdrops are just, you know, giant Sykes that are like giant printouts of New York City.
It's
and
great, right? It doesn't
you know,
ruin it. It's like you watch the movie and it's this fantastical world, and then suddenly when you watch those special features, you pull the curtain back, and it doesn't blow the thing. It doesn't ruin anything.
especially if it's your thing. You know,
Especially if it's your thing, it opens up a whole brand new fantastical world that you're into.
Yeah.
But you're right, isn't it? It's almost sad because I do remember going back, which I still have to purchase a DVD because when I own a DVD, I go back.
Right.
Where I don't do it as much in Netflix and stuff. It's weird.
Right.
It's weird.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know why, but too, I think it's that one-stop shop. What do you think of this? I mean, you bring up such a strong point as far as not being able to get the full experience of the film if you're interested. It's so much fun to watch the special features and to see the interviews and the bloopers, and you have to like go to Netflix now and then maybe go to YouTube and find it.
Yeah.
Where
If there is anything.
that DVD is like your one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And it really robs a lot of people of that great experience. They haven't quite figured that out yet. I think they sell something with special features, but nobody's really buying that yet.
Well, if
like
it's,
on Amazon,
you know, and for me, that was my film school, you know, and to the point of, you know, at what point did I start really thinking about camera angles and things like that? It's like that trained me how to think like a director. Hearing a director talk about it, watching like an audio commentary, and watching the movie with the director essentially is what an audio commentary is. And you're just watching everything that happens in the movie with the director telling you what they went through to do something, what the decision making process was like, and really just kind of divulging like what their process is. And that became like something that I was super interested in, was just the process of filmmaking from end to end. And so that's kind of what, to answer your question, like, so when I kind of got more and more into the craft of filmmaking and stuff like that, as much as you can be when you're just still making movies with your friends, you know, I became like, that's the kind of stuff that would make me think about, you know, camera angles and what you're trying to do with a scene, and of course, you know, when you're that age, like, oh, how do they do that crazy special effect or that crazy stunt? Not just that age, I still love that stuff, but you know what I mean. But like, but just kind of pulling that curtain back and seeing, because a lot of people don't. you know, a lot of people love to that are very interested in film love to watch as much stuff as possible.
Yeah.
I do too, but I don't feel satisfied until like I've kind of wrung it out for everything.
Exhausted every
right.
aspect of it. Yeah,
And to, you know, I had like, you know, again, I was obsessed with Star Wars, you know, and I would get books and like special edition DVDs or CD-ROMs or whatever they had, you know, that type of stuff, like where I would just study something. And then it got to that point where when I finally was at a point where I was doing this professionally, like you kind of like all of it you just kind of revert back to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the training.
You
like,
still love it as much as you used to. I don't mean the act of doing it. I mean, do you still love a good movie with special features, and do you still love falling down the rabbit hole? So you're still
absolutely
a straight up fan, even though you know more about the craft than ever before.
Yeah.
But you're still, oh, nice, man. Nice.
Well, I mean, because it's one of those things where it's like, if you're into any other type of art, you know, some things are more expressionistic than others, but like filmmaking, there's a certain amount of it that is just very, very practical, you know, and just kind of seeing like, oh, that's the trick that they used, or, you know, and kind of being able to take that stuff and be like, oh, I want to try that. I want to use this whatever crazy camera, you know, setup or whatever it is, you know. Yeah,
it's such a cool thing. It's such a cool. Did you ever do the public access thing or any of that before college and such?
No. Yeah, I don't think I really I was always interested in it, but I didn't really pursue it until I was in college.
Okay. Yeah, I got lucky. I think somewhere around like the 8th grade, somebody told me there was a family friend who worked. I think you volunteered, which they don't really have this as much. You would go to a public access station, you'd be able to take a course, and then you'd be able to have access to equipment, TV equipment, a TV station, and you'd be able to put something on, and it would air.
I would have killed for that.
I know.
I would have killed for that.
I was a kid, so I couldn't do it. I was too young. I was in the 8th grade, but I used to win these little writing contests, because another thing, I was more into writing than anything for quite a bit there. So it was even not so much about filming, it was about writing content and all that. And I was a huge comic book fan, which I think fed me more than any Edgar Allan Poe piece I ever read, you know, especially dialogue. I think those guys are great in dialogue. In fact, this is off topic a little bit, but on Star Wars, I was in Wisconsin recently, and I wandered into this giant comic shop, and I haven't really bought a comic book in quite a while. Well, now Disney owns Star Wars, and Disney owns Marvel, so now Marvel has this line of really well-written stories. One's just Darth Vader, and then one's on the other characters, but it's the bridge between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And I picked up the Darth Vader one, and it's fantastic. It's like watching a good Star Wars movie. So
that's great.
Yeah, if you really want to buff out, or be a movie buff and continue the buffery, if that's all incorrect. Everything I've just said. I like that. Right after I say I'm a writer, I speak as incorrectly as possible. But anyway, it's fun stuff, dude. It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
But so I was told by a friend that this guy, you know, he knows that you won these writing contests, and he said if you want, you can help him write a little movie. So we wrote this little movie, and he was a friend of my father's who I grew up with. He's like an uncle to me, and he never did the movie. But then I just went off and I wrote this like 60-page script, and it had all these locations and all these places, because I thought, you get these cameras and a whole crew and all this stuff, you know, this is great. So I wrote this movie for all that. And then came to find out you get one camera and maybe a light and a microphone.
Like a work light.
I mean, that's it.
Yep.
You did get access to a TV studio, but I never really needed that. This guy said, no, I'm not going to help you with this. It's too much. I was too young. They wouldn't let me take the class or do the equipment.
It's too expensive.
And they
stuff,
said,
right?
And there's a name that should be mentioned, a fella named Carlos Godinez, who just passed away like last summer. I was riding a bike with my daughter, and then I got a message and like almost broke down because this guy changed my life. He eventually was running the station, but at the time he got a degree from Purdue in film and TV, and he was just fantastic. fantastic. And he read my script and said, well, this is ridiculous. There's fight scenes and car chases, and you're like a kid, at the time. Then by that time I was like 16, and you're like 16? This doesn't make any sense. Let's do this.
That's great.
He trusted all these teenagers, and we created this hour-long piece, which eventually was shown throughout the Midwest and became, I think the second one. Then we did a second one. By the second one, public access people were giving us a crew, and they actually used the second piece as part of their teaching curriculum.
Oh,
what you could do. It was great, and it ran for 10 years in multiple stations, which was very cool. And then that just lit me up. But I owe that guy everything. And you're going to love this. I remember the first, he would just film everything, because I didn't do that much behind a camera to this extent. And I remember just some guy busting through a door with a gun and thinking, wow, that looks cool. And he says, yeah, you try it. So I got behind the camera, and I could not center this guy. We were just on a tripod. And then he gets behind it, and I mean, this guy's the character on screen is all over the place and just perfectly centered the entire time. And you were just with a guy that could have probably done even more than he did, but he loved that whole world. He loved running the little public access thing, and he loved the outreach,
That's great.
But isn't that nuts? Like, then that led to everything, because when I started working professionally, I started honing the craft later, because I was first an English major, then radio and TV, because I was working on radio, which fans know this already. I was on the Danny Bonaducci show. But later on, I did a short film with my wife, who wasn't my wife then. And the president of DePaul University was a film buff, found the film, started hiring us to do little random work, and then hired us and put us on staff as their in-house production team.
Oh, wow.
But, dude, I learned so much from the people that they kept bringing in, which was great. But everything that I did that they loved totally came from the stuff I did when I was a kid, came from the public act. Like, I was refining with what I learned, but because of doing everything with one camera, I was storyboarding in my head, so I was editing practically while shooting, and I didn't have too much guesswork by the time I got behind the editing suite, which was linear and So I mean, did you feel like, how much did you learn based on that before you even got to school? How much did you must have felt comfortable behind the camera at the very least?
I mean, to me, I truly believe that filmmaking is a language.
Wow.
And like any other language, you start off and you learn vocabulary and very specific, you learn very basic words, right? And so, and then you kind of build it up, and then you learn how to be expressive, and you learn how to, same thing with filmmaking, right? You start off and you might just have a camera, and you might just learn how to do one type of shot. And, you might learn how to, then you learn how to move the camera, and then you learn about editing and how editing can influence a scene. And all this is grammar, right? Like, this is all, you're making a statement, and the statement in itself could be very basic, right? Just like you're communicating something, you could say something very eloquently or very to the point. And you can, the message is the same, but the way you say it and the end result of the way people receive it will change depending on how you say it.
Wow.
And so to me, that is learning, like, that point in my life, I was learning the basic vocabulary. I was learning different words. I was learning different ways of saying something. And
you were way smarter than me. Like you were getting a more all-encompassing kind of outlook, where I was just like, let's shoot over here.
I wasn't thinking of it like that then, but now
you were learning.
Yeah,
even at a young age, though.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, it's just it's like. And like when you learn anything, you take it a piece at a time and you become obsessed with that thing. So like when in college, I was really loved close-ups, like all the time, just getting tight, and like, why are we not tight? And then at a certain point, I'm like, we're missing all this other stuff in the frame, so you kind of take it and you learn about the thing, and then it becomes part of you learn a fancy new vocabulary word, you want to use it all the time, and then once you've said it enough and it just becomes part of the normal way you speak, you might pull it out when you need to use it, but then otherwise,
Man, so by vocabulary, you're not just literally talking about words, you're talking about the vocabulary of the expression of the shot of the entire act, like a close-up. And how interesting do you I mean, the whole close-up thing, it just became mainly because it was your stuff dialogue driven, or there was just something about
when I was in college, I really liked. There was a few films that I was really into that really just
they got in there.
Made tight. Powerful use of close up.
Okay,
and at the time, and it has a lot to do also with there's a lot of it's almost fashion in film where it's different eras. There's certain things that were very used and then are very common, but then kind of die away. So there's that too. The films that I was into were doing that. And in that era, I went to college in the mid 2000s. So that was. There were a lot of people like doing close-ups back then for some reason. I don't know.
What's funny is they do it now, but it's different. And this is more, I think, some of the TV-based stuff and some not. But there's sometimes where you see a close-up where it's just working. They have a brilliant actor. They're selling the piece. They're doing the piece. But then you have some close-ups that just happen because we have a young, pretty person, and we're going to put a close-up on the young, pretty person. And that's right. Where the meaning behind it isn't as... it's not quite what it used to be. We're going to take a quick pause because I want more coffee.
I need a...
Oh, great. I blink.
Got a work thing going
I blink for the crowd.
Okay.
There we go. That was our eye blink. So an eye blink for the audience and a couple minutes for us to refill coffee and, play catch with a Star Wars stuffed animal in the living room. Going back to that
little
Lucas
Jabba
thing,
the Hutt.
The funny thing is I think my daughter, somebody bought her a lightsaber like 8 months ago or maybe for her birthday, and it just sat in a corner. Psh, what is this? I don't care about this. And then now when she sees Star Wars, she has to run and get the lightsaber and act out like every fight scene. Star
awesome.
Wars.
Your daughter's awesome.
He's a keeper, man. So anyway, we get into once you're getting into the actual educational end of things. Mm-hmm. Where'd you go to school?
So I went to Purdue University, which is not a major film
Lafayette?
School. Lafayette.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to Purdue. I was majoring in comm because I had no idea there was a film program, and frankly, my parents weren't thrilled about me going to film school.
Sure.
They wanted me to get a real job and a real career, and something that I could do more than just.
Make stuff up and shoot it,
or we'll hold a sign on the side of the highway saying we'll film for money, or whatever. It's the whole starving artist thing, and parents looking out for you and making sure that you're not spending their money for
Absolutely.
no reason.
So then, what you're obviously you're looking. What did it seem like there was an elective possibility of a film class or something, or how did you start getting into it?
I mean, I think at that point I was I just figured that film is like this really far-fetched thing, and I want a career, and I'm in college to get a job.
Right.
And so, when you're that age and people are like, pick a major, you're just like, okay, well, that sounds good. You got a good comm program here? Okay, I'm in. I did that for a little bit, and I don't know how I caught wind of it, but I was like, oh, there is a film program here. It's a small one, but there is one, and it's a major, and you can get a bachelor's degree, and so I looked into it and started off minoring in film, and then there was a certain point where I was just like, I'm just called mom and dad.
You're all in.
I'm doing it. I'm sorry. I love you. I'm just gonna do it. I'll get a comm minor.
How did they react to that at first?
I think, my parents have been so supportive. It's one of those things where, I just called them and I was just like, look, this is what I want to do. And they were just kind of like, well, get the comm minor, then you can have that. You graduate, and if you need a job, you have that. And so, yeah, they were pretty supportive.
So then in the midst of it, once you really go all in, mm-hmm. what are you focusing on? I mean, are you already trying to freelance at that point? Was anything kind of coming your way, or was it just, I'm sticking to the collegiate program here, and this is what I'm doing? Or,
well, so the blessing and the curse of Purdue just being a school that did not. Just film was not
it's known
a major
for engineering
program.
and nursing.
Exactly.
Yeah, teaching, I think, too.
Like pharmacy,
education,
business. All these like real jobs, right? And so I
there's not like George Lucas Hall.
No, but they had a good theater program though that they just built a brand new building for and stuff like that. So essentially, like the film program was an interdisciplinary program, which was great because it was somewhere they had. Connections with theater, we had access to the theater department for actors and, technical
props
people, props, that type of thing. Comm department, we can get cameras from, and then the film program got their own cameras too. And so we were kind of in this, we were also kind of at the beginning of film as a major at that point there. So there was no curriculum really. Like there was set classes, and it was a great program for theory and history of film and the more academic side of it. I took Italian cinema classes. I took.
Really?
Yeah. Super into Italian neorealism.
So was Sergio. I can't forget his name, but
Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
Well, it was more like
as in like spaghetti western style,
or it was more like Italian neorealism. Neorealism, and kind of the more political. There was a lot of very political films that we watched. A lot of Fellini.
Let me ask you this, because there is a beauty to some of those spaghetti westerns. So then, when you're talking like an Italian political film, was it just as interesting still the way they shot it?
It was, and so like we watched films like Battle of Algiers or. We watched a lot of Fellini, but we also watched like The Bicycle Thief. Those types of films that
folks. What do you think of this, man? Folks, watch. Find. I mean, it could just be a fistful of dollars and some of the old Clint Eastwood stuff. But when you watch a spaghetti western, now so much of it's been taken and used. Some used well, some used and abused by modern filmmakers. But if you watch a spaghetti western, it's awesome because it translates like language. It really does. You've kind of opened my mind the way you said language and the vocabulary. Mm-hmm. But when you're watching a spaghetti western, the way it's shot is just different enough. It's very similar to maybe watching an old American Western, but yet so different. Mm-hmm. It's like you're having the same conversation with somebody, but they're from Italy and they have an accent. Right. You're watching the film and it just visually has an accent, And you would say that to all the stuff that you were seeing? Like, was there a sort of just that sort of different take on angles and how they expressed with the camera?
So our professor, his name is Ben Lawton, not Bin Laden, but Ben Lawton.
That's a Saturday Night Live skit waiting to happen.
He's a great guy and had such interesting perspective on things. And so we would watch a film. We watched The Conformist. Just I'm naming one of the films, one of the Italian films, and a lot of these, especially these kind of Mussolini era films that had deeply political message in there. Yeah. But because of censorship and because they couldn't outwardly speak out against the government, they had to bury it in subtext. And so we would watch this film and we'd just be like. And he'd be like, "Okay, write a paper on it," and we'd just be like, "What? Okay," and we would, and then afterwards he would tell us, "Oh, so this subtext here, da 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 da," and this is what a phrase that I'm positive that he coined. He called it the conceptual nucleus of a film. And so the conceptual nucleus of a film, if I'm trying to remember because it's been a little while since I've been out of college, but basically it's the main message that they're trying to make. And every little thing, every little point, or maybe a camera angle, maybe a little thing in the performance of the actor, there's some sort of subtext, and he would call these ripples. And the idea is you throw a rock into a pond, and all these ripples form, right? And if you look at where the ripples are, but you didn't see where the rock was thrown, you can trace the ripples back to the source of the original stone, right? So he called that. So you would take these ripples, these little pieces of evidence of what the filmmaker was trying to say, and trace it back to what he called the conceptual nucleus. He's very, very unique perspective, but so you kind of look at films almost like a detective, and you go, okay, what is this piece of evidence telling me? And eventually you kind of build a sub-narrative of what the filmmaker was trying to say, not just what the film did to you personally, because on that level, that's a very subjective thing, but what is the filmmaker trying to tell you, and what is the message of this film?
Wow.
And so it made us very analytical, and and then when we were making our own films, probably very on the nose, we were trying to put in that type of subtext and that little extra layer under everything that we were doing.
What an amazing standard to set up for you guys so early on. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you see that even in the modern day, sort of film programs. I mean, that's a very finessed piece of information, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Because that's going to affect everything.
Mm-hmm.
But really give you a deep layer right off the bat. I mean, that might have affected the simplest piece that somebody was making.
Right.
Right. Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah. So we had those type of the academic angle of it, where we would watch film history. We watched the earliest, the Lumiere brothers, the original, the train arriving at the station. If you've seen Hugo, they reference to that of early cinema of the first time there was a public screening of this train arriving at a train station, and everyone in the theater freaked out because they thought they were going to get hit by a train.
Really?
So yeah, we watched that.
I wonder what year that was.
Oh, it was 1910 maybe, something like that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's very early on.
It's great.
And then we watched so we watched everything. It was kind of a crash course. We watched Buster Keaton, Chaplin, and all that too. The kind of silent era and all that. And so we were constantly watching films and analyzing them and writing about them. And then, but on the other side of it, because the program was film and video studies, so the video part of it was still big. And so a lot of people in that program were also learning about actual, we had a lot of programs that were about video broadcast. You could film Purdue basketball games, or you could be a camera op. For the stuff that they... So
the hands-on wasn't necessarily lacking? You were learning shooting, you were learning...
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it was... we did have production classes, too. I mean, we had... at the time I was there, we had instructor Jason Doty, who went to I can't remember which film school, but he went to a proper film school. And so
did you have access to lighting knowledge? He was able to sort of show some of that?
It was a crash course though.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a screenwriting class that was very in depth. But then we had a production class where everyone in the class would direct a film, and you would get in groups of 4 and you would rotate crew positions.
Nice.
So, this week you're a producer, next week you're a director, and next week you're an editor, or whatever it is. And so that was kind of a crash course, and that's what most people did. And so I had a group of friends, and we were very determined to make our own films and stuff like that. We saw this equipment that would just be laying around for most of the year, and then there was a short period of time where the production class would be using the equipment. So we had access. It was at the dawn of HD becoming a little bit more
accessible and consumer friendly, so to speak, even.
Yeah.
But man, so were you doing side projects in the midst of your actual scholastic projects? Is that where?
I don't know how I was able to do it, and it was probably because it was a small program at the time and everything like that. But I was making that my core curriculum. My senior year, I got something like 7 credit hours just making my own film. Mm-hmm. And so, I just went to the head of the program and was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to make this film. Here's my script. And then I just had write a paper at it at the end of the semester. And that was...
The beauty of those early days of digital cinema programs being brought up is you had access to the stuff because they still didn't know exactly what they were doing, and it seemed to me like equipment was just lying around all the time in a way, because they didn't have a 24/7 use for it yet, because the curriculum was so new. You know, when I worked over at DePaul, it was a guy named Matt Irvine who did some documentary stuff, and he was just building DePaul's digital cinema program, which is now, I guess, a much bigger program. You know, but
DePaul. I mean, I know a lot of people that have gone to DePaul in the industry.
So that when it first started, you know, they were getting all their gear, and we were on the ground floor. We had to shoot some of the stuff for their promo, but then we also had to star in it. You know, I'm like in a motion capture suit showing this like example. It's just crazy. But it was interesting because it was just all ground floor. Yeah. You know, but the funny thing is, by the time we're into year 2 and we're working with some of the students, but really we were more of a promo piece, so we would go shoot the softball game or we'd do something else, but we did a lot of promo pieces. There was this thing called the Window to DePaul, and the TV screens everywhere on every campus, and all of our pieces would have to just constantly go all over there. But you know, whatever it was, there were so many things. They had, you know, I mentioned to you earlier, they had links with NASA. So when we started our own company, we went right to the NASA people and started working for them right away. But it was just interesting that there was so much access to the gear, you know, and it would have been nice to maybe have a few more instructors. But it was funny how it starts off. And it's funny how your back end or your front end can really serve you, because by the time I was 2 years in, I know that these students technically knew way more than I did. But I learned so much from those early years. I was still relying a lot on the basic knowledge I had from just shooting so many pieces, you know? So I wouldn't even have to storyboard more than half the time, because I could create the piece in my head. I knew it so well because when I was 13, I had to edit in my head with the one camera.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's crazy. But now, so it's weird. Like even for you, like for it to be a new program at Purdue, suddenly there were these little other areas of focus that were able to like hone you and make you a stronger film Jedi.
Well, and I think like, you know, at the time that I was there, you know, you could get anything off the internet. You know, if you want to learn how to use a camera, if you want to learn how to color grade, you want to learn how to light. Yeah. You know, that was a point where there was, you know, it's not quite where it is now, where like if you're interested in anything in the world, you can find a huge community out there online. You know, so it was still a very niche thing at the time, but you know, so for instance, we had these HD cameras that were small chip cameras that were, you know, they were designed for ENG news, and we wanted to use them for film. And so, you know, a friend of mine who was an aspiring cinematographer, he bought a lens adapter. And I don't know if you remember when people would put these 35 millimeter, this is before DSLRs, when they had cheap big chip cameras, but they would it was literally like a piece that you would put in front of the lens of the camera with a
Whoa. Oh, that's all right. I don't know what that was, but
anyway,
there's stuff falling all over the place.
Neighbor's gonna call the cops, man. No, but
wait, it was like a filter that went on?
So what's the best way to describe this? So think of a camera, right? Like you have a lens that focuses an image onto a piece of film or a sensor, depending on if you're digital or film, right? Yeah. So essentially what it would do is it would be a macro lens in front of it that would focus the image onto a piece of ground glass that would basically project the image onto that glass, and then your camera would focus on that image. And essentially it was a way of tricking the camera into having a bigger sensor. It's technical.
What was it?
And
what would
bizarre.
It create? Would it create like a film look? Is that what
you
it did?
You could shallowed up the field. You
could,
you could swap lenses, because it was a fixed lens camera that we had. So it was a very like guerrilla, like we don't have access to it, so we're gonna make access to it. Like I would say the equivalent nowadays would be getting some sort of lensing system on your iPhone. Yeah.
How interesting. The only thing I remember is being able to adjust like a shutter rate. And then that created this film, this beautiful. We used to film stuff on at the time it wasn't even HD, a Canon XL2, I think it was called.
Oh yeah, and it was the 24p camera,
and it was beautiful. Like the film look, I still love the look of it. You know, every once in a while we'll still bring that thing out, and it still looks rich and beautiful to me.
28 Days Later, I think, was shot on an XL1.
Really?
Yeah, or the first part of it. Yeah, I mean, and I think like because at the time that was at the dawn of this, like, you know, before that Hollywood and filmmaking was this. There was a huge, you know, if you wanted to make like an independent film, you had to either be Kevin Smith and just max out all your credit cards, or you had to, like, an indie film would be $1 million at the very cheapest, because you needed to shoot on film, you had to buy film stock, you had to develop it, you had to have access to a lab, and all of that just to shoot anything. And so like we kind of came in, and it was before DSLRs, but it was like right before DSLRs. And so, yeah, it was kind of this very like, okay, we can't afford the really expensive cameras, so we'll get a crappy camera and trick it into being an expensive camera.
What kind of stuff were you shooting on your own?
We did, oh man, I did a couple films. I was into, and it's super embarrassing because, you look back at your old work and you're just like, oh God, I like did the sappiest love story, but I wanted to go surreal. So it like all took place in this dream. It's like typical film school shit.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
But it was like, so there was that one was called A Dreamer's Rendezvous. And it was very like, I had like, but we did it. We tried to do it as close to the real thing as possible. Cause, in the summers, I worked on independent films as just crew.
How would you find those independent films?
So after my freshman year, when I was in the summer, I literally just saw this newspaper article in the Champaign-Urbana newspaper that they were shooting this film. And I had heard about this filmmaker who had done a couple other things. And what he would do is he would raise his own money. He had a company, and he had a company like that did design or something. I'm not even sure. And so he would use that to bankroll these like indie film projects. And at the time, this was kind of like, this was like 2004, 2005. So this was in the heyday of like independent filmmaking, when major actors, like now major actors might do television, but they're less likely to do micro budget indie film. That's just the way the industry is right now. So he had, this is what really got my attention. He had Pat Morita from The Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid. Oh. And I'm like, dude, I saw it. I looked him up online. I emailed him and I said, whatever you want, I'll work for free. I want to work on your movie.
Do you remember what the piece was called?
It was called Act Your Age. Okay. And it's really funny because a lot of my friends that I made on that film have gone on to do other stuff. And I've still, there's still a lot of, most of them are still working in the industry, actually. Yeah. So I did that. And so I would learn
a ton. You must have learned a lot.
Oh yeah, I learned how a set works. I learned how departments work. I learned like the mechanics of a film set, which was huge. And a matter of fact, on that film, because it was such a small thing, I show up the first day in pre-production and they're like, we need a props guy. You're the props guy. I'm like, okay, whatever. And they're like, you're the property master. And I'm like, what's that? I like look it up. I'm like, oh, that's the props guy. Okay. And we have these pre-pro meetings, and like, I shit you not, we're sitting in this meeting, and this is my first day, I don't know what's going on, and people are looking at me, and they're like, I haven't read the script yet, and they're like, and on this scene, we need to have that ear ready. I'm like, the ear, okay, I'll write it down. Like, what the hell is he talking about? God. And because there was prosthetics and stuff like that in this movie, but I didn't know what the story was. But anyway, long story short, like, I just kind of just fell into that, and then about 2/3 of the way through, the second AD, assistant director, and I had become pretty good friends at this point, and the first AD had to leave for another project that had reshoots that he was contractually obligated to do. Okay. So the second AD became the first AD, and then I became the second AD on the first film that I ever worked on, and it was a crash course.
How did you feel? I mean, because you're shooting scenes. Right?
No, it's more like a stage manager.
Okay, I was wondering where does that position?
Yeah, so it's like essentially the first AD is in charge of all of the stuff that is happening directly on set, and the second AD is kind of like, so if the first AD is like the stage manager, making sure everything's happening on stage, in this analogy, the second AD would essentially be the person making sure everything behind the scenes is working, so that everything from where an actor is in hair and makeup, so that they're camera ready by the time the camera crew is ready for him, all of that type of thing. So
props have to be ready, the actors have to be ready. I mean, everything.
Managing departments, basically.
Oh man, and, that had to keep your head spinning.
I was like 19, man. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I was wide-eyed and kind of freaking out.
When you get a position like that, are you automatically just asking a million questions?
I was trying to act like I knew what the hell was going on.
That's tricky. Yeah, how do you, are you just Googling stuff, or are you?
I mean, the great thing was that we were in it, and the great thing about working on especially like a small independent film is it's like summer camp, man. Like you become friends with everyone knows each other, so it was okay to ask questions. I tried not to burden people too much, and I tried to make it as seamless as possible, because like it's not like I jumped in the beginning. The thing's already a well-oiled machine. It's like 2/3 of the way through the shoot. I'm just trying not to fuck it up.
So by the time you walk out of that, what did you feel more prepared for? I mean, how much did you learn walking out of that? Just a wealth of stuff.
I felt like I at that point finally, like that, I don't know, like it was all up until that point very kind of theoretical, everything that I was learning. It's like very like, okay, I know what these departments are and what they do because I've seen it on a DVD or I read it in a book or, whatever. But like to actually see it working, like seeing the machine alive. And that's sometimes for some people, that's the point where they quit, where they see, because filmmaking sucks, man.
Yeah. Like, when you're in the trenches, it's
16 hours.
I was just going to say long, long days.
I mean, you're exhausted all the time. You, like, your friends and family, like, are wondering what the hell happened to you because you're just never available. Right. And any day you get a day off, because we were shooting 6 days a week. So on the day off, I just sleep.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're very like, so for a lot of people, like, at that point, it's like, it's the crushing reality of it's not as glamorous and fun as you think it is. For me, it was the moment where I'm like, hell yeah, this is awesome. I'm living it. Like I'm in it. You know what I mean? Like the thing that I've been wanting to do my whole life. I wanted to be a director, so not quite, but seeing the machine alive and being surrounded by other people
just fueled you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice, man.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I want to get into how you. We're going to take one more eye blink, and then I want to get into the bridge and how you got into the professional world from that point on.
Cool.
Here's your eye blink number 2. Boom! That was the second eye blink because the coffee's flying through me, like the Force.
It's good coffee.
Yeah, man. So now I'm interested in. So it's funny. Whoa! It's funny because everybody has that moment. I feel like it's probably in anything, but especially film, because you can't really wing being a doctor. It's not like, I kind of found my own way to be a brain surgeon. Like, you really have to follow those.
Looked it up on Google.
Yeah, Googling a few things. And there happened to be like a summer low-budget brain surgery going on in my neighborhood. So I mean, with film, you really can. It's funny because people can find their own sort of little bells and whistles and their own little even mishaps and farts that create something true and big. So you need enough of the A, B's, and C's to do it. But then there's this wide scope of knowledge that can just be applied in certain areas. Again, when I was working in the professional world, I relied more on what I did because I probably did about 100 short films between the ages of 16 and 20. And when I got into the professional world, again, we ran our own company for a while, and we were like talking to these bigwig people. I got to know quite a bit about marketing. You just have to when you run your own company. You have to.
Yeah.
Go into even just chambers of commerce and things like that, and it's so weird. But so I had the sell down because I was a stage performer anyway and an improviser, so I was able to, hey, let me tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, But it's funny how still to this day, I mean, I was able to refine the craft. Even it's funny, working at DePaul, Janice, my wife, and I were in charge of the production company, but then they hired this guy who was, oh man, I feel bad I don't remember his name, but he was one of the cinematographers for like The Fugitive and a lot of Chicago-based places, right? And he was technically under us, but I learned so much from that dude. And I could tell he'd look at me like, oh, God, really? You don't know how to light this here? And we would get this new state-of-the-art stuff and lighting stuff, but every time we would have even just a talking head, this guy would show up with the oldest, dustiest like lighting kit that he would bring from home,
right?
And just crumpled up papers, and he would
was it Lowell? Were they Lowell lights?
Dude, and it's weird, you know. I mean, I liked the using like a Chimera, and again, I loved it. I went online, I did some of that because some of the job we were given was based on these. There's a piece called Sandcastles that's on YouTube right now, and that was actually the piece that got us the job. You know, again, the president of DePaul just happened to see it, and he was a film buff. You know, next thing you know, we're like going down to Missouri because DePaul decided to buy 5 tigers, and some retired couple owned 5 tigers and had it on this giant facility.
And they're like, yeah, we want that.
And they're like, you know, let's work with these tigers. They decided to try to come up with some, you know, some sort of ecology-based course where students could go down, study the ecology, study like these tigers. So then we went down there, like our first... Wait,
sorry, to pause that. Who's the guy who's just like, okay, do we have it in our budget to buy 5 tigers? Yeah,
I mean, like the president.
Somebody is, someone makes a decision that we're gonna buy 5 tigers.
I gotta tell you, this guy named Jack Minogue, who actually married us, he actually did our ceremony because he was a priest, the president of DePaul University.
Did you have tigers at your wedding?
We didn't. Oh, that would have been great. Oh man, missed opportunity. But he just had
renew
this
those
kind
vows,
of
man.
He had the power, and he had this like Willy Wonka vibe. He loved film.
That's great.
So we're like, wait, are you sure you want to hire us to be full time? He's like, come with me to DePaul.
Those are the perfect people because
he was a visionary and a little bit overly. I mean, he fantasized a little too much about like what film could do, but he saw it. Yeah. And now there's this super huge, great digital cinema program that's great. You know, but he brought us in and. He had us go down. We saw these tigers, and he's like, I don't know, this is just going to be something. I could just tell. And then he said, listen, I want you to just film the tigers. And we had to put together these little just promo pieces, which looked really cool because then it's running on the window to DePaul, and students could see like, oh my gosh, I could go down here, study and hang out with tigers. And then he said, all right, now I want a 20-minute short film. We're going to sell it at the gift shop. Just, it could be about nature, use the tigers as a backdrop, has to appeal to like ages 5 to 90.
Oh, that's so great.
All right, go.
That's so great.
So I go down to Missouri, I spend 2 days writing the script, hanging out with these tigers, and dude, the tigers it's different. You go to the zoo and they're very lackluster. You go to see these tigers who have all this space and they've been brought up by this old retired couple and they're full of life. Kind of domesticated, but still, you know, dangerous.
Right.
I'm sitting by this tiger, like sitting next to the big cage, and the tiger's sitting next to me. I'm taking my break. I'm writing the script, taking some notes, having lunch next to this tiger named Perry, and he's next to me. And there's just enough for them to like put their head by the gate, but not enough for their jaws to bite you, so you can kind of pet the tiger.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, I write this script, and it's kind of about nature, and we're near the Mississippi, so I made it. It's a story called Fang the Fearless. It's about some like some children's book writer who was writing about how we got to knock down the trees in order to make room for the big city, and then he meets the tigers, and then he kind of changes his tune. It's simple and loving and blah, and it was such a blast.
Yeah.
We go back down with the actors, and this is a little offshoot, but this is just an experience, I guess. We go back down with the actors to shoot, and as soon as I get to the cage, the 5 tigers all start huddling to where I was, and they're rubbing their heads on the cage to be pet, and they're making this noise like, They remembered me. They remembered like my scent, and I was their buddy. It was really weird, because at first I thought, wow, they're not remembering me like, oh man, we got to eat this guy. It was more like, oh, that's our buddy. He's here. So interesting.
Wow.
And that film.
That's the thing. Yeah, man. Like there's.
You're in situations you never thought you'd be in.
You just don't, and you can't even like. It's just a normal thing that things are just always
there's tigers,
crazy or off the wall or different. Yeah, I mean, like and it becomes normal too. Like, that's the best part about it. Is like, you talk to your friends and like, oh, how was your week? Oh yeah, went into the office. Da 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 da. How about you? Oh yeah, I just hung out with like 5 tigers or whatever.
It's a weird world.
Yeah,
but it's so magical, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're taking that because again, all that stuff. Still, most of the basis of what kept getting me hired was I still attribute more of it to the storytelling I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I refined it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing something even today, how much do you feel like you still owe to that young kid with the video camcorder?
I mean, I think there's a certain point where I don't know. I mean, like I am still that kid. You know what I mean? Like
So the zeal you've brought with you, obviously.
Well, and man, I've never really thought about this that much. But I mean, like there's a certain point where if you're in this industry and you want to be in a creative field in general, you almost need to. Like that is your survival instinct, is to be that kid and to think like that and to think outside the box and to be inventive, because if you are just kind of copying other people or kind of doing paint by numbers, people notice that.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because in any other field or just common sense tells you that you should grow out of being that kid, but it's survival here. You know what I mean? Like it's brilliant. Necessary. It's a skill that you need to have, because there was a point where and there have been a few points where I had to like check myself and be like, am I doing it this way because this is like the paved road, the way that it's supposed to be done, and how, because when you're an artist, you need to be able to tell things from your perspective and from a unique perspective. And in any other field, like a brain surgeon, you have to learn the right way to do it, right. And there is no right way to do it. The only right way to do it is from an inspired place. I mean, there's plenty of wrong ways to do it. There's an infinite number of wrong ways to do it.
Well, you have to have enough knowledge to do it, but then you have to have that, that ability to know where you can color outside the lines and know where you can just even jump off the cliff,
right?
Yeah. Did you run into that? You and I almost shared like a quick war story because, I'd mentioned that I have one movie. It's the only production I've ever done that's never been finished, and it's the thing I'm sitting on this movie, and it's weird because you have to refine and utilize your talent. My brother Paul is one of the most talented people I know. God, this guy. I'm a writer. He's a great writer. He can outright me, and it's wonderful what the guy can do. But he's so talented. He has a curse and a blessing. He's so talented that he's able to fall into things before he even has time to hone it, like before he has time to catch up, because he's so damn good. He was a singer. I was a trained singer. I honed the craft, and now I do that professionally. That's what I mainly do. That's what pays all my bills. He started doing it in some coffee shops, and he was so likable, and he had the basis of such a great sound. He started getting all these gigs before he finished honing the craft. So the guy had to learn, and he could never fully get to where he needed to be as a singer until years later, because he's continued to learn.
Right.
But it was one of those things where he's so talented that the cart always went ahead of his horse.
Right.
And then he worked in theater. So then for film, he kind of did the same thing. He's such a brilliant writer that he had film guys wanting him to write scripts, and then he wrote one, and then somehow he ended up kind of directing one. And it had a lot of technical problems, but next thing he knew, he had a crew around him, and he said, "Hey, man, that thing you did that got all that attention, public access, write that character, put him in now, and let's do a movie. I have a crew, and can I see this crew? Can I see what they've done?" And he's no, but they've done cool stuff. Some of them worked on the Superman movie. So we get into it, and I noticed it was the same thing. He was so good. Even as a director, he directs like a writer. So he's able to kind of create activity on the screen that you wouldn't think of. Like, this guy should do that back there. So he really adds color. But he didn't get to do the A, B's, and C's of basic filming, and he didn't
Right.
log in the hours of being behind a camera to where he could just edit in his head.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the first day we're shooting this piece, and I said, I'll step back, you're the director. But we were doing a dialogue piece, and they had 4 cameras for a 2-person dialogue scene, 3-person dialogue.
Wow,
Four,
okay.
4 cameras. And I thought, oh no, shooting this like the Matrix. And naturally, what do you think happened? Camera A is like, I can see camera B. So then they're moving and they're moving and they're moving. And by the end of it, when they're finally ready to say action, I'm like, this is like an intimate speaking scene. The closest camera to me is kind of on my ass behind me.
Right.
There's nothing on my face. I think there's a guy under the bench to my left that might be getting half of the other actor's face.
Right.
So they were so concerned with like not seeing each other. And right then and there, I thought, oh no, this might go terribly wrong. But to his credit, it's like this piece is going to get done. It's in post-production hell because of that. He didn't get to. He probably should have done like a bunch of 5-minute pieces to just hone the craft. But at the same time, all that's good in the movie, a lot of it is due to him because he's just so talented. He's so good at this. Without any training, he's able to frame and he's able to create pieces. So I think our lesson, if we did get to the lesson thing, but then I want to get into your professional world, is you have to make sure you get the A, B's, and C's. Even if you start off, like I do believe, get a camera, start off, go crazy, make up your own rules. But then as you move forward, you have to start picking up what's proper and, what's needed. What would you say to that? I mean...
honestly, I think the difference between anybody in an experienced veteran in any field, especially a creative field, and especially in filmmaking, is that the difference between who I am today, and I'm nobody, but like anyone who is
folks, don't listen to that, by the way. We're getting advice, from a person who's in the field. He works on major productions. All right, I just had to reset that up for you because you're the real deal, man.
So, oh man, I don't know.
You're technically too big for this show right now.
My ego is just floating somewhere in the clouds right now. No, but the difference between who I am now and the kid is like an exponential number of fuck ups and learning. Like, and I've trained like a lot of people too, and have had like different proteges, and I always tell them like, you can't learn that the stove is hot until you burn your hand.
Nice.
Like you have to, like, you can tell someone about the 180 degree rule, but until they film something and then they see it in the edit and all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, we just jumped the line, and that's why, you can't truly understand why something is the way it is until you've made a mistake. Or you can't understand not even why something the way it is. You can't refine and improve and evolve. I mean, natural selection is something needs to die, right? So you need to make a mistake, and you need to learn from that mistake. And as long as you don't make that mistake again, or you don't make the same mistake twice, you're constantly moving forward and improving and evolving as a filmmaker. So I think, to that point, if he kept doing it and he kept on making different projects, the next time he won't have 4 cameras, but maybe one of them he'll have 2 cameras and one of them will be placed in the wrong spot, or, and in the beginning, it's all kinds of mistakes like, oh, wait, these two, the camera and the audio aren't synced properly, and so the time code drifts, or it's, technical things like that, or the mic wasn't plugged in all the way, so it's all crackly, or, or the boom op didn't know where to put the mic, or, like very basic things like that, or the shot was out of focus. And then you fix those mistakes and then you kind of iron those out, and then you kind of cross into a new level. I mean, martial arts, I think is a good, I like to think of, I like to model the kind of process of goals and accomplishments with martial arts in a lot of ways, because you get a belt, right? You get a yellow belt, right? And you learn all the skills for the yellow belt, and you practice those over and over again. And you're not at an orange belt level or whatever the next belt level is in that, but you get really good at becoming a yellow belt, and then you earn the orange belt. And so you kind of stick into you kind of learn the layer that you're in. And then when you're a black belt, you still use the same techniques you learned as an orange belt. You're just way better at them, and they've become a part of your repertoire as a martial artist. So I like to talk in analogies, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I love it, man.
But I mean, like, it's that sort of thing where it's like anytime you do something, to this day, anytime I do a project, I'll look at it and edit and be like, I'm not doing that again. Or I see this thing, it's going to drive me crazy. And like, I think the more you do it, the way you improve is other people might not notice it as much, but you notice it. And then you kind of kick yourself over it. And I think the minute you stop thinking like that and you're just like, I'm hot shit and everything I do is awesome, that's probably the point where you become, George Lucas doing the Star Wars prequels and you kind of like, lose the spark of why, what makes something great. But, you're
right. You got to get the reps in. You got to get the reps in and do it and do it and do it and do it and do it, But yeah, you're right. The whole never being satisfied is another thing, which again goes right back to you just can't. It is so different from the medical field, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
because you can't do that. Like, okay, man, I screwed up those first 5 because I was trying a different angle, and I wanted to use a different scalpel, and this one I thought butter knife because nobody thinks butter knife, man. I wanted to think outside the box, and he died. But you know what? Next one, next surgery, I'm gonna nail it. Yeah, it gives you that you have the freedom. It's really an interesting line to walk. Because you have to technically stay within a parameter so that you don't fuck it up. But then the world is your oyster at the same time. You can think so outside of every box.
Yeah, and they're, in a sense too. I mean, like, it because it's all subjective. Something that you think is, I think one reason why some movies are great is because of the limitations that the filmmaker had, like the original Star Wars, Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, like all these great films from film history. If you go back and you watch the documentaries or the interviews with the filmmakers, they went through hell making those films, and they didn't get what they want. Jaws, they didn't get the damn shark to work. Yeah. So it wasn't on purpose that you never saw the shark, and it builds the suspense. I mean, it was a happy accident because they just couldn't have a working shark, so they only had the shark in the climax. Really, like there's a couple shots here and there where it
made it horrifying. It really did work.
Yeah.
Happy accident. Yeah, and a shark's a great analogy, too, anyway. It's like, if you're going to do this, you need to know where the sharks are, because your film piece or your small piece, whatever it is, it's an ocean. And you can swim in that ocean any way you want. You can backstroke, you can dive, you can doggy paddle, do whatever you want in this ocean of film. But make sure you learn the basics. Make sure you know where the sharks are.
Right.
Because you can swim however you want. But if you end up just going where the sharks are, you're going to get eaten, you're going to die. So just always know, you have to know just enough to survive so that the piece can happen.
Yeah.
And then once you realize what the box is, then you can swim all around it and, even peek outside it a little bit. But just always know where the sharks are, people. So that's right. Well,
can we get that on a bumper sticker?
I was just going to say, we're going to have to write a book on filmmaking and just call it Where the Sharks Are. How about that?
It's kind of like Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah, man. So then you get through these different areas of college and everything. So what happens after college? How did you get where you are now? Because now you're a full-timer, man. Can we say the name of your company?
Yeah, Lakeview Productions.
Lakeview Productions, boom. The guy's doing it, and he's doing it well. So, but what led to that? Like, were you doing a bunch of freelance work first?
Yeah, it's funny because when I graduated, I think there's a very common narrative of people wanting to get into film. So, you graduate college and you drive to LA with no money and whatever you can fit in your car. And that whole thing where you want to go to the biggest place, but start at the bottom. I don't know what it was, and it probably, to be honest with you, if it's just, we're all friends here, it was probably ego as part of it. I didn't want to do that. I had, I worked on a lot of projects as whatever crew position they needed me to be in. And I really loved directing. Like, that is, I still love it. And I can do all kinds of different jobs, but directing, that is where my passion is. And so what I wanted to do was, instead of starting at the bottom in a big market, I wanted to start in a little market and be at the top.
Nice.
So yeah, what I did was, so I'm in Indiana, and there is not a film presence whatsoever. And there's a very small like advertising, there is an industry in that area. And so I contacted an ad agency that I just found online, and when I'm hunting for jobs, and I just kind of straight up tell them, I'm like, look, you guys have, because they did commercials, they did regional spots, they did statewide stuff, and they did some stuff with Purdue University. So they've, with Big Ten Network and everything like that, they even had some national stuff in that regard, kind of just specifically in that niche. But so I was like, look, at that point in time, the democratization of film gear was in full force, and you could buy, you used to have to spend $100,000 on a camera. Now you could spend $5,000 on a camera and get not the same, but you can get in the ballpark of where you can get with that kind of money. So I kind of came to them with this proposal. I'm like, you hire me, and this is the equipment that you would need to get. Here's some of my work with that exact equipment, I basically pitched to them creating an in-house video department. There was some back and forth about it. We had a few meetings and stuff like that. And then, I was super fortunate that the owner of the company was just very open to this idea. And he got really excited about it. And so, they hired me for very little money. But it was a full-time W-2 job.
Nice.
And I could be a director, and I could, we got a few lights, we got camera, we got boom mic, all the very basic stuff that you need to have.
Did you pull actors just from the university then, if you needed them, or did you not necessarily?
No, actually, because we were an agency, though, we could hire, actors from Indianapolis.
Okay.
So, and yeah, we did some, like, depended on the budget and what the project was.
How long did you do that?
3 years. And so it started off as just kind of this experiment, and then it, by the time I left, it turned into a department, and it was a very profitable department of the agency. And to this day, they still have in-house video there.
So when you left, like, at one point were you starting to test the waters elsewhere? Like, what were you, or how did you test the waters elsewhere? Did you take a trip to Chicago and kind of investigate?
I mean, Chicago has been Chicago is where I always had my sights set. LA is cool, New York is cool, but Chicago is my second home.
Yeah.
I grew up in Central Illinois. My dad grew up in Chicago. I have a bunch of
film
family
industry
up here.
has been growing here.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially over the last 10, 15 years, it's been huge.
Yeah, and so kind of also with that mentality, I wanted to go into another market, but still be in a similar position I was in. Because at that point, I'd been doing it for a few years. I didn't want to go from being a director to a PA. So
were you looking for another just ad agency or something? Or what were you looking for when you came to Chicago?
I was looking for a lot. I was looking for anything, honestly. Because, I mean, let's be honest here. There are almost no full-time jobs. If you're interested in doing this, if you want to be a director, I don't know what I did to make it so I could do this full time. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it's incredibly rare. And so I was looking for that. I didn't want to do freelance because I was already in a position where, I didn't want to take too much of a step back when I made my next step. And at that point, I was open to anything, really. I had some friends that had moved up here and gotten jobs. But so I'd worked for that agency for a while and did a lot of really work that I'm still really proud of. And I had a lot of fun, and it was very because the market was small, and people were just excited to be able to shoot something in HD, right?
You were the big fish, man.
But I could also do it. I was the expert. I was the wizard. People didn't question. I'm just I think we should do it like this. And I got to experiment, you know what I mean? I got to do, so there was one particular project, it was for Purdue basketball. And this is my proudest work for that when I worked there. And we did these commercials, and Purdue basketball at the time was like nationally ranked top 5. They were really good. And you know, we went to I think they went to the Final Four around that time too. And so they were very good that year. So normally when we do stuff, because we did stuff for football and football wasn't as good, and really like they just wanted to sell tickets, right? But when the team was that good, they don't need to sell tickets. You just need to, like, you know, put it out there that tickets are on sale and people will buy them. They'll sell out.
Nice.
And so at the time, Purdue is obviously a big engineering school, and Neil Armstrong went there. So and a lot of astronauts went to Purdue. And so we did this campaign that was tied in with the 40th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. And so we basically did these spots where it was no dialogue, and we rented a Red camera, and at the time they were brand new. We rented them because we wanted to shoot slow motion, and we wanted to shoot 100 frames per second. It was like the only camera that was remotely affordable, even in rental, to do something like that. So we rented a Red camera from Lakeview Productions, and we just, and it was really cool. The spots turned out great. It was basically like the athletes in front of a star field on basically like, and we took the excerpts from mission control recordings and played them over what the athletes were doing. But the whole thing was like, it was literally just like a guy dribbling a ball, and then there's like one small step for man, and then one giant leap, and he shoots the ball, and like, but it's very dramatic.
Great concept.
Yeah, and it was high concept for just like a college basketball thing. So
yeah.
So that was really cool, and we got to rent this expensive camera.
How were you able to get that audio and stuff? Like, who'd you have to call, or how did that?
Oh, it's all online. It's all
okay.
It's all public domain. So
is it?
Yeah,
okay.
It wasn't an issue.
Where does one get that type of stuff? Like something like that? That's more exact than just getting, copyright free music. You know, for young filmmakers out there.
It's a good question. I think because there's like archives online where you can download anything,
and a lot of it. Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm pretty sure what I did. My whole process was Google that, Google Apollo moon landing, sound, and it was all there, and I downloaded it. Yeah. So we did these spots and rented this camera.
Are you utilizing? So those are the spots you're kind of putting in your bag when you come back to Chicago, and that's what you're showcasing to people. So what was your first major job in Chicago?
Because I literally, so what ended up happening is, I did a couple like films with my friends and stuff like that who lived in Chicago. There wasn't any major, I didn't have like a breaking in as much as like, so I essentially like the owner of the company of Lakeview Productions, Chris Gerhardt, he is they own the Red camera. That's all I know him. He's like the Chicago guy who has a Red camera. And I worked on a student film, didn't want to do it, and my friend my other friends were doing it, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll just do it. And I like AD'd it, I assistant directed it, and it was just like this whatever thing. But I met Chris, and like this, it was just this. I almost didn't go on that, but I met Chris, and then so then I knew him as the Red camera guy, and then we got. Then we used it for this Purdue spot. And then afterwards, I was just like, try to keep up, contacts with everyone. And so I was just like, hey, here's the spot, eventually want to move to Chicago, da-da-da-da-da. And then, and so it was this weird thing where like Lakeview Productions at that point was kind of like a catch-all for his work as a cinematographer for the camera, because again, it was like one of the few Red cameras.
Yeah, I remember people, that was a big deal, people talking about the Red camera for a bit, Yeah.
And so he had one of the few Red cameras, and it was in Chicago. And so like he was busy enough with that stuff, but people were starting to ask him to do more and more. They did some music videos, like, and some pilots, and like he was starting to
pilots even.
Yeah, like he was starting to kind of dip into the more full service production company stuff. And so at that point, I kind of had done this with this agency in Indiana where I kind of came in you guys don't have this, but here's what I can offer, and let's create something together, and kind of an entrepreneurial perspective on that. And so we kind of had a similar conversation of like, oh, so this is what Lakeview is now. What could it be? And so we just started meeting about it, and like I would go to Chicago like literally every weekend. I work all week, drive up to Chicago. You know, it was like a 2.5 hour to 3 hour drive, depending on traffic, and I would just do it every weekend. And eventually, like, you know, we kind of were at this point where like, okay, we're gonna either do this or we're not. Are we gonna do this? And he's like, okay, let me make some calculations. So I take a big pay cut. I moved to Chicago, get a studio apartment in Lakeview, and we're just like, all right, we're doing this. And then it has grown into like, I couldn't have dreamed like what it is growing
because
into.
I mean you're working on Empire, you're working on The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean whatever other shows you can even talk about. Have you worked on any major film productions yet, or it's more been in the TV realm right now?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot in television, and that's where the industry is.
This guy's a mover and a shaker.
Chicago.
We can't even talk about it, but like in the middle of it, he got like a text message for like a pretty major production, and he's like, and we won't mention any names because we can't just yet, or they'll kill him. But as soon as he did it, I'm like, what? You're working on that? I'm a fan of that. And he's like, yep, looks like I'm working on that. And you know, and the beauty of it is not only was it cool to see you get this text for a very major popular, you know, piece, but to see the excitement in you when you got it. And I love that. That's my favorite thing about people in the industry who are getting as far as you've gotten, because you can just see that, oh man, you are still that kid, man. You really are. And to see that zeal and that, oh man, this is cool. Well, you know?
I mean, here's the thing. Like this, I said this earlier, but like you have to. This is like one of those things. I'm sure it's the same thing with music. It's like you have to love it. Mm-hmm. You have to like. If I did anything else, I would probably lose my mind. This is the only thing that I want to do. This is the only thing I care about. Like career wise, it's the only thing I have any aspiration for. I could not work this hard or work these types of hours or do any of this stuff on anything else.
Yeah.
And this industry also is super competitive. There are so many people who want to be either where you are, where you're going, or anything like that, you know, at every corner. And it is just one of those things where if you don't absolutely love it, I can guarantee you it's not worth it. Like it will crush you if you don't love it. It could be a
soul-sucking experience. Yeah,
absolutely.
Instead of a soul-feeding experience. So then all of a sudden you guys had enough work to where it was safe to at least kick off the company. Mm-hmm. But then what happens? How does an empire come to you?
I mean, it's funny because a lot of stuff that in my experience doing this, and I've been doing this a little more than 10 years now, like in my experience doing this, like there's no way to really like plan for anything. You just like opportunities to come up and you have to be ready to act. And
sure.
You know, like the difference, like you have to be incredibly lucky a lot of the times, but then you have to be able to capitalize on being lucky.
Yeah.
You know, Empire, I think just came up, you know, we came in the first season before it was before deal. It was Empire, you know, and like before anyone knew what it was. But you guys
were just the production house in town that you had a good enough rep. Mm-hmm. Because it's still, what is it? Is that Fox? It's
Fox.
Yeah. I mean, it's Fox. So that's still a huge, huge entity. Mm-hmm. So you guys were blipped enough on the radar for them. I mean, that's still a big deal. So you've done enough in the industry. Like, where do you think they found you? You know, is there some sort of upper echelon directory that you're in, or did they just...
I'm sure. My guess is they probably had a pile of reels that they were going through and looking at different companies in Chicago and things like that. I mean, they called us.
Dude, high five me, man! Come, bam! Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it was like.
So they called you.
Yeah, and
what are they asking you for? They're just saying.
Well, I mean, at first it was like, we have this shoot and we need a crew, and you know, if it becomes a positive thing, we want to do more, or we, you know, if the show gets picked up, because I mean, it's television, man. Like, right. And it's and to be honest with you, Fox, like, not like, they are very ruthless with killing shows if they're not doing well,
Oh,
if they're not
okay.
performing. And so, we kind of, and the thing with television is like, you just have to like, you can just you have to always be counting your blessings, because like it could go away at any time.
But still, I mean, even though it's not a big deal yet, because it's you're working on a pilot and then a new show, but Terrence Howard is, like they're major celebs in this in this piece.
Well, and I mean, the thing with Empire was also, it's like a lot of these people were known, but now like they weren't household names.
Yeah.
I mean, Terrence Howard, yeah, and Taraji, I think people knew who Taraji P. Henson was.
But not like now.
Like,
now
she's like Cookie, right?
Yeah,
like
she's enormous.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, at the time, it was we were very excited about it, but we were very determined to do as good of a job as we possibly could. And for who we are as a company, we do all kinds of stuff, you know what I mean? Like we do projects across the board, and
big or small still.
Yeah, I mean, and different formats. We do music festival after movies. We do, we do this type of thing, but we're all filmmakers in the company. So our basis for what we're looking for, we're not thinking like an E&G camera crew, which is probably what they were looking for when they first hired us. We're thinking like, okay, what's the most cinematic way we could film this?
Nice.
How do we take like our own, the things that the gauge that we use to determine whether something is good or bad, instead of like, and we've always tried to do that. We always try to push it a little bit in the direction that, we want to put our own spin on something.
That's going to separate you, because I think the thing that we were talking about, poor brain surgeons who are getting picked on right now. You guys are making really good money though.
You guys are doing way more than we are.
You're doing fine.
I don't think I've saved a life yet.
Somewhere there's a brain surgeon, who saved like his third life this week and is driving around in his fancy car. Like, well, man, what? I'm still cool. You guys are definitely cool. So
he's like, don't use a butter knife. That's a stupid idea. Who would think about that?
Who would think of it? Hey, mark this down, butter knife, just in case. But no, so yeah, much love to brain surgeons. But I mean, there is a point where there are companies out there or people in the industry who will stay focused on almost a cookie cutter thing, and they can fall into it. Mm-hmm. And it's weird. The company that we ran after DePaul, our big thing that we would tell, because we would work for these major corporations, and we would do a lot of in-house pieces or whatever, or at the time they weren't commercials, but they were like online promo pieces, specifically for the web. But we would always say, listen, we believe in your company, we're learning about your company. So this was cool, by the way, because do you like this part of it? I kind of dug this. I was learning something new about a major company. Every client was a different learning experience when you did the ad agency thing.
Yeah.
But I would always say, listen, we're independent filmmakers. So everything we're doing, we're going to treat it like a film. We're going to give it an independent filmmaker's sort of vibe and scope.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's going to instantly become more relatable and visually more fun than anything else you're going to encounter. And it became, our kind of marketing line, but it was totally what we believed in. We did that, and it made it more fun for us. So you're able to put that spin on it, and obviously it served you well, because I mean, look where Empire is today. It's huge. Was that the first time you were really working with? I mean, because again, Terrence Howard at the time was already a major celebrity. Like, was that your first time working with somebody that big in the industry?
I mean, it's funny because we worked on all kinds of stuff beforehand, and me personally, I mean, I've met my fair share of celebrities. I wouldn't say that I'm like going to parties and schmoozing with them or anything like that.
Did you have a starstruck? Is there a major starstruck moment that you've had since doing this?
Pat Morita. Yeah.
Really?
Mr. Miyagi.
Early on.
Yeah. First one.
Nice, man. Well, I mean, how could you not?
I drove him to set, and so I was driving him to set. We were driving through cornfields, because that's where I'm from. There's cornfields and soybean fields everywhere. And first of all, the man is not what you expect. I mean, he is like full American accent, potty mouth,
boisterous, funny.
Yeah.
I've heard him in interviews and stuff.
Yeah, and he's just driving. He is like, I think he was living. I can't remember where he was living, but it was some city or something like that. So just driving through these cornfields and all this stuff, he's just staring out the window. He's like, fucking shit, man. Wow. And he's just like amazed. But yeah, I mean, I think like the most starstruck moment I ever had though, when we were driving to set one time, and he's like, he's telling a story, and
So you're in a car with him.
yeah, I'm driving, of course, and I had mentioned to another actor who I picked up first that I'm a huge fan, and I loved the Karate Kid as a kid, and it's all true like that. That was one reason why I was into martial arts as a kid.
Oh, nice.
And so he tells Pat Morita that, and I'm like, oh man, this is like so embarrassing. Like he's like gushing about, I'm about the guy that I'm driving to set, and so like, Mr. Morita thought it was cool and all that stuff, and he starts like talking about how positive of a character Mr. Miyagi is, and he's like, when he says Daniel-san, and he like does the voice, and I swear to God, I almost wrecked the car. I almost killed the man, and like, yeah, it was crazy,
dude. Yeah, that's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, and I mean, the crazy thing was he passed away like a couple months after we did that. It was one of the last projects that he worked on. So it was kind of this incredible experience.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
And now you're in it. I mean, it's crazy because you're, we're neighbors, and you and I walking outside. I'm like, I've got to drive to Milwaukee. I got to do a show. What's going on, man? You're like, I got to edit Empire tonight, or you're editing. Or
I'm not editing the show. Yeah. To clarifly, like promos and
So and that's what. And when you direct something, you're directing promos for the show. Like when you earlier, you mentioned doing something with Terrence Howard. That was
it was some commercials that was for this thing that aired during broadcasts.
So how busy are you during the run of the show? Like when they're in full on, because they're off right now, right? Are they in hiatus right now?
No, they're going.
Oh, they're going right now. Okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think every season's been a little bit different. The first season was very intense because
what's your role?
We're the production company for like any promotional stuff.
Awesome.
Like there's the main unit stuff, the actual show, and they have a cast or they have a crew and everything like that lives with the show, and then we come in when they want EPK, electronic press kit, or they want behind the scenes
electronic press kit for like a show. Mm-hmm. How does that work? Like I know what that works in the music.
Social media is a big thing. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter,
Man, oh man. I mean,
content
to get
creation.
that call, because they have the crew for the show, but to get that call just to help for certain aspects of promotion for a major network show. I mean,
and
you're doing well, man.
Yeah, and we did some really cool stuff. We did there's a lot of brands because of the size of the show. We did some stuff for like Lincoln Car Company. That was a brand tie-in. Last season we did some stuff for Pepsi.
So do they pull in the actors, or are they pulling in? It's just a piece that's related to the show in a way.
Yeah,
kind of like when did you see they had like a Nissan car commercial for the Civil War movie, the Marvel movie?
Oh yeah,
did you see that? And
it's exactly that type of thing.
Okay, because they had like a couple driving like a Nissan car, but then Captain America's running.
Oh no, yeah,
but it was like a weird tie-in, just cross promotion.
Exactly.
You're in the industry and you're in like a big portion of it, but you've still found an interesting niche.
Yeah.
That is really cool, man.
Yeah.
God, see, people, you find your way, and then you find your pocket of the universe to work. It's all out there. There's always something. There's always something.
Well, and we have like a lot of. I mean, the great thing about this is like television's seasonal. Like there's like TV season. It starts up late summer, and for Empire, because it's an 18 episode season. It's the first season was supposed to be 13 episodes, and they pushed it to 18 because of the success of the show.
Wow.
So I mean that goes to March. It goes from July to March, so it's like Empire season. And then we have the other shows that we're doing right now too, and we have some stuff in Atlanta and things like that. And so we're kind of playing whack-a-mole with all these different things. But then we also have our own clients that are in different projects. We have different projects.
Now those kind of ad type promo projects, or do you have any other little film things going on the side with that?
Yeah, I mean we've done,
just a general.
Yes is the answer. I mean we've done all kinds of stuff. Like we did a short you know, it was really cool. A couple of years ago, we did a short that was kind of like a feeler pilot thing for like a pitch package for a TV series. It didn't end up getting picked up, but like, you know, there's so many. Like, you know, I directed the short,
okay,
and then we took it to the Cannes Film Festival in France to pitch it, and so like, you know, you just never know where you're gonna end up.
Did you go to Cannes?
We spent like 3 weeks in Cannes during the festival. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I mean, so like, and like the coolest experience, one of the coolest movie going experiences of my life, because like most of that experience was just like really cool movie going experiences or fan experiences.
Because when you go, you're able to just go see the pieces.
Yeah, you do business during the day, but like, you know, you can go see films, and you know, there was 2 amazing experiences from that. First one was Mad Max Fury Road premiered at Cannes.
Wow.
And we watched it. It was like an early morning screening, and we got up super early, went over there, waited in line, because you know, you get passes. Like there's like a raffle basically where you if you're going to the festival, you will see films in the big great amphitheater, but you know, in this case, it was like we couldn't go to the big premiere with like Tom Hardy and you know, Charlize Theron and all the big actors or anything like that. But it was like an early morning thing. But we go in this giant theater, this incredible theater, and like the audience was amazing, and it was like the best. That was like one of the best film going experiences. Like after every action scene, everyone applauded and like cheered like it was a performance.
Wow!
And like afterwards, the film got a standing ovation.
So even just the style of the audience, like the view of the audience, like that's a whole different audience experience.
Yeah,
that's like old school. Like I went through that. Probably watching Star Wars and things like that. Like you don't really see that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and because it's like, you know, at the festival too, there's like a certain amount of like, it almost feels like going to see theater, you know, where it's like everyone's experiencing it for the first time. No one's seen this movie before, and like it's and a lot of times like the filmmakers are in the theater with you, and so there was that. And then a friend of mine who also went to Purdue, she got me into a screening. She now works for in marketing for a film company in LA, and so I got to go to a screening of Natalie Portman's she
directed something,
debut.
right?
Yeah. Tale of Love and Darkness.
Okay.
And so we got to go to that. And
How was that?
It was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. I sat right behind Natalie Portman. That's all I know. And you know, basically like my teenage crush was sitting right in front of me. So it was pretty surreal. But
did you like just sneak up behind her ear and just one time go?
I'm pretty sure the bodyguard that was sitting next to her would have taken me out. No, I don't think he would have been a big fan.
Like, you didn't even do that yet in any of my movies till the end of the last one. It doesn't count, you weirdo.
He was a whiny little kid in those movies.
Yeah, he was a whiny little kid. What got me out of the industry was the peaks and valleys. We'd have a great 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden we'd have a slow month. And then it just so happened that music came a calling in a good way, and I got offered these amazing things, and I'm a singer, you know, I love it.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't help but take the gig.
Yeah.
And I think Janice, who was my partner as well, she was more interested in marketing things, and she took a marketing job. So it's kind of a weird thing, but what a ride. And you're in it, and you found a way to keep things big and small, just enough to just maintain. I mean, how long have you been in this position with this company?
Almost 6 years now.
So 6 years, and how soon did you get something, like how soon did Empire come to you?
Oh, Empire started, like at that point we were well into it. Empire started in late 2014. But I mean, beforehand, I mean, at that point we were already, like, I would say a mature company.
Yeah.
And
well, you must have been, again, for them to reach out to you.
Well, and we, you know, it's interesting because the position that I'm in, I'm also vice president of the company. So there's the creative, filmmaker side of it, and then there's also running a business, which is it's very like it's really interesting kind of taking your childhood dream and monetizing it. Yeah.
I mean, that's an interest. So you're dealing with financial responsibilities and knowledge. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and all kinds of staff, crew.
It's the thing that people don't always think about. How you have to. You're an artist, but then if you're going to do this, you have to become a business person.
Yeah,
and that's hard. Was that transition hard? The learning. I mean, you seem like the kind of person who goes after and just learns. You educate yourself.
Just kind of dive in the deep end and hope you learn how to swim, right? Yeah. I mean, it was a very much a big learning process. This whole thing. I mean, because coming from my last job where I was, working at an ad agency and stuff like that, I had to learn marketing and all of that too, and also thinking in terms of like that was a small business that I was working for, so. I was in charge of a department within the business. So, I mean, I kind of had some experience.
It's good. So it built on all that. Yeah. Man, but here you are. I mean, so then would you say in the midst of doing all these different things, you still love directing the most? Uh-huh. How much of your existence is as a director? Would you say like 60% you're editing, or are you ADing, or are you directing, or is it just kind of across the board?
I would say the majority of it's directing,
okay.
But it's like translating that to different departments and different, part of directing is just managing people and different types of people, and so, whether it's, a lot of the times I'll be overseeing an edit or, the post department is doing something, and then I need to be the boss man for, whatever that project is. So, I mean, it's interesting because I do wear a lot of hats. For instance, we do one really fun thing that we do, and like I have had a blast doing, is these music festivals. And
what is it? So it's like almost a mini documentary after the fact or something?
Yeah, I mean, most music festivals that are a decent size nowadays have what they call after movies and different like video. With YouTube and everything like that, like video has become a big way to market a lot of these festivals because you can kind of capture the experience of something. It's like, nowadays, like a lot of music festivals especially have all kinds of amenities outside of the music. So you can look at the lineup and just be like, oh, these are the bands that are playing. And that used to be like the litmus for whether or not you want to go. But now they have like one big festival we do is Firefly Music Festival on the East Coast. And it's a camping festival. So everyone goes there.
Nice.
And there's nothing else there. It's not like going to Lollapalooza where like you're in downtown Chicago. This is like, you are in the woods. You go camping with your friends.
So where are you guys staying?
We're staying at a hotel.
In town, yeah.
Not doing any of that crap. But
how many big names are in there?
Pretty big names. I mean, Paul McCartney headlined a couple years ago.
Wait, did you shoot? You were shooting a Paul McCartney performance?
Even better, actually. We weren't allowed to shoot Paul McCartney, so we were watching it from Super VIP.
Yes!
So,
that is better.
Yeah. But, no, I mean, like, name a big act. I mean, in indie music and rock and some EDM and stuff like that. They do it. Like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers played a few years ago.
Okay, look at man. When you get to this point, what were you guys using for? Where were you putting your reels? Like, how were you getting word out there when you were still a new company? You don't see commercials for people like you,
right? Oh, I mean, I think a big part of it is your reel.
But who are you going to? Are there areas of networking? Like where do you go? How do you push the business?
That's a good question, because every single instance where we've gotten something has been a different story.
Has it been somebody seeing a piece,
or word of mouth, or a lot of it is just kind of being selective on how you on what you put out there, and letting people and we try not to define ourselves too much. And that has been a big part of it too, because if we say, we could have just been like, we are the music festival production company. Yeah. And that's all we do. And, and then we probably would get tons of work in just music festivals. But, because we didn't.
How do you get a music festival though?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think our producer knew the guy who ran that festival.
Okay.
And
so it's just a spider web of possibilities.
But like anything else, we bid up against some other companies. We submit a proposal and a budget, and here's our reel.
So you know who to go after, but then besides that, every job you get can lead to 5 other jobs or 5 other potential jobs. It's just, it's a spider. So what would you tell? Now here where we go. What do you tell somebody trying to break into this world? I mean, they just have to keep hustling, basically.
Yeah.
But the person who doesn't have a reel yet, or no, let's jump ahead. The person who has a reel, they've done some pieces. They want to get similar, a place similar to where you are. What do they do? What are the? I know, and we all know. Let's preface this by saying it's a hard business, folks. It's really tough to break into. But what kind of tip do you give somebody like that?
I don't think there's a magic bullet. You know what I mean? Like, every single person I've ever talked to has a different story of how they got in. And because going back to your brain surgeon analogy, it's like there's a very defined way to become a brain surgeon. You get this degree, then you get into med school, and you try to get into a great med school, and yada, 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 and you kind of follow this path, and then you go into an internship and a residency.
Everybody goes through the same path for the most part.
And this is like, I think the thing that going back to my martial arts analogy is like, you want to be a black belt, right? Even when you're a white belt, right? When you're at the very beginning of something, to know where you want to go is a huge part of it. Like not where you want to go tomorrow, right? Like we didn't wake up in the morning, 6 years ago and be like, okay, next step, music festival, right?
Okay.
We weren't thinking that. We knew where we ultimately, feature films, TV series, that type of thing, and so we have a long-term goal. And then it's finding opportunities within the things that come to us to push towards that greater path. So yeah, I mean, I think that mentality is what got us the different things that we've gotten, like, knowing that we want to do, like, that are at our heart, we're filmmakers, and that's the way we approach things, and the way we approach any creative.
So you throw a wide net, but you're filmmakers through and through. Everything you do,
and it's the way we do it. I would say, like, that's how we can make a distinction between us and anyone else with a camera, because everyone has a camera now. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm going to invest in this piece of equipment, and then therefore I will get work. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because there needs to be. You have to be offering more than just, you guys need a 4K camera, I have a red.
Would you suggest the filmmakers still doing like a YouTube thing, putting their pieces up, just getting anything out there? Because you hear about some guys just, I mean, it's all so random, I suppose. So it's just a matter of just keep doing it, putting yourself out there, and then looking for whatever works, whether you're going to an ad agency or whether you're, trying to create a reel. I mean, I would imagine a reel is like the best starting point. Get yourself a reel with different styles of work, right?
Yeah, and I think it's, I think you need to try to put out, I mean, it's just doing the work, you have to do as much, you have to do as much as you possibly can, and keep doing it and learning and evolving and improving. And I think the funny thing is, if you keep doing it, and you put your work out there and all this stuff, and network and do all the stuff that they tell you to do, but really, like, the main focus in your job is to do is to really focus on whatever your craft is, get better at it, and hold things to your own standards. Don't, like, early on, if you are playing to people with low expectations, or just want something that looks nice, or just has a baseline of, like, decent production quality, you're only going to go so far. But if you're pushing yourself and doing it for you and constantly trying to improve, in some ways, and I can't say it always works this way, but in some ways, the next step kind of will present itself to you because you're ready for it.
So it's almost like whether it's for a job or not, as soon as you finish a piece, your next job is to do another piece.
Right. And I think like as a musician, I'm sure you're not like being like always thinking in terms of like, how do I book this particular gig?
Right.
I was
just honing the craft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you focus on doing the best you can, and then those gigs will present themselves to you. It's like, and I'm sure.
Wow, that's a good, I don't connect those two dots often. But the first thing I did was like some festival where they literally paid us in food tickets. But we were ready when we got to that festival.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, wait a minute, we want them at this festival and we'll pay you money for it. So yeah, you're right. Just be ready for it.
And I don't think I would say, because I used to really, especially when I was first starting out, really like puzzle just think constantly about like, how do I get out there and how do people notice me? And this person is where they are now. How did anyone notice them? I can't get anyone to notice me. And at a certain point, it just has to be about the work. If you keep doing the work and committing yourself to it and holding it to your standard and all these things I keep repeating, is like, if it really matters to you and you do it for you, everything else has a funny way of, not always, but I mean, if you're lucky, things have a funny way of working themselves out, and a path will present itself to you. And if you've done it right, and the path presents itself to you, all you got to do is walk through the door,
Dude, you just spoke to every artist out there. You know what I mean? Music, acting, film, directing. Like, you just spoke to everybody with that. Just keep doing it for you. Keep honing the craft. Quit thinking about where this piece here is going to get me there, or this song here is going to get me there. Just do it for you. You're right. You're absolutely. Where's your end game eventually? So, what's your dream thing? Do you want to be able to direct your own film? A major, your own piece that you wrote, or
I mean, I
that's
think
the end game. That's the final.
I think
not
so.
Final, but I mean that's
well, because that's the thing. Like, as soon as I do that, then I'm going to have another goal.
Else, But right now, the one of the things you'd love to get done is maybe in the midst of all this wonderful work you're doing, write and direct something.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you keep on saying that like as if I've arrived somewhere, and I don't feel like that at all. Every step I'm at the bottom of the mountain.
That's what makes you the real deal. And you alluded to it earlier. As soon as you're satisfied, you're done.
Right.
You're useless to everyone, mostly yourself, Seriously. Folks, did you have fun, man?
I had a blast. Yeah, this is great. I'm so used to I was telling you this, Robby, like, I'm so used to being the one interviewing someone else that, like, this has been great for my ego here. Yeah.
Matthew Mann, man, dropping some straight up knowledge on us. Can
I actually
do you plug or anything?
I want to plug one thing. We just did this project. And they're about to release an Indiegogo campaign.
Nice.
For it's called Science with Sophie. It's essentially a science show for girls. So think of like Bill Nye the Science Guy or something like that. But it's targeted towards girls to get interested in the science field. But it has a very fun, tongue-in-cheek, very Bill Nye-esque quality to it.
Where can they go to see this or to find? Where do people go to? Because it's a Kickstarter right now.
So
where do they go?
We just did the video for the Kickstarter, and that's going to be on sciencewithsophie.com. SOPHIE, sciencewithsophie.com.
And this is a timeless podcast, so this will matter for a little bit.
Yeah,
but
hopefully it'll be like a
people
are
going to be downloading
this
show and listening to your story for the next 5 years. It's crazy. By the way, just so you know.
Oh man, no pressure.
Well, there you go. So this is Robby Celestin and
Matthew Byori Mann.
Oh yeah, like you gotta drop the middle name, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had a good time, folks. This is another real deal here. We got amazing people on this show, and here's another one. So I hope you like the story. We're gonna have you back on, and we're gonna go through like some film talk.
I'd love to.
So it's gonna be great. We're gonna geek out and have film talk, folks. You love them. Find them. Well, you'll find them. You probably already found them. You just don't even realize yet. This guy's all over the place. So have a great week. Have a great month. Have a great year. Go out and find your smile. Boom. Good stuff, man.
That was great. That was fun, man.
Welcome to my life so far. You'd think by now I'd be a star. I may be long-winded, but hey, Maybe lick your lips when you're hungry. Maybe drop your head when you're sorry. Maybe shake a bit when you're worried. That's